two friends vanished on a camping trip, leaving behind only questions and despair. Their disappearance remained a haunting mystery until the GoPro footage emerged a year later, revealing the terrifying truth they never lived to tell. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Carol Foster sat by the phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed her son's number for the 20th time that morning. The boys were supposed to have returned yesterday evening, and Alex always called when he got home safely. Always. The rhythmic ringing gave way to voicemail once again, and the knot in her stomach tightened. "I knew something was wrong when the sun went down and I hadn't heard from them," Carol recalled, her eyes fixed on the family photo of Alex on the mantelpiece. "My son is meticulous about checking in. He wouldn't just forget." Across town, Ethan Bell experienced a different kind of dread. The 16-year-old paced the living room floor, pausing occasionally to glance out the window, expecting to see his brother's familiar silhouette approaching the house. The silence felt wrong. Ryan's absence created a void where his laughter should have been. "Our house was never quiet when Ryan was home," Ethan explained, fidgeting with his smartphone. "I kept sending messages, thinking maybe they lost track of time or their phones died. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right." By noon, both families had contacted each other, confirming neither Alex nor Ryan had been heard from. Their worry crystallized into action. Carol called the local authorities while Ethan posted on social media, asking if anyone had seen the two friends. The police response was swift but measured. Missing adults, they explained, especially those on a camping trip, often returned on their own. Nevertheless, they dispatched officers to the trailhead where the young men had planned to begin their hike. What they found only deepened the mystery. Alex's car sat in the small gravel lot, untouched. The vehicle was locked, with no signs of disturbance. When officers gained access, they discovered the keys in the ignition and both backpacks neatly placed on the back seat. "It looked like they had just stepped away for a moment," Officer Dana Reese noted, her expression grave as she surveyed the scene. The seasoned investigator had seen many missing persons cases, but something about this one triggered her instincts. The organization of their gear suggested they never even started their hike. The contradiction was unsettling. The meticulous arrangement of their belongings inside the automobile clashed with the chaotic reality of their disappearance. If Alex and Ryan never left the trailhead, where could they have gone? And why would they abandon their supplies? As search teams assembled and the forest echoed with calls of their names, Carol and Ethan waited by their phones, hope diminishing with each passing hour. The first day of searching yielded nothing but questions, casting long shadows of doubt that would only grow darker in the days to come. The search and rescue operation launched at dawn, experienced handlers and their dogs moving methodically through the dense Pacific Northwest forest. Beams of flashlights cut through morning mist as teams called out for Alex Foster and Ryan Bell, their voices swallowed by the vastness of ancient pines. "The dogs picked up their scent initially," recalls the lead tracker. "They followed it eagerly toward the river. But then, nothing. It was as if the boys had simply vanished into thin air." When the search party discovered the campsite, what struck them most was its eerie orderliness. The tent stood perfectly pitched, sleeping bags neatly arranged inside. No torn fabric, no blood splatter, no signs of wildlife interference or human struggle. Even their backpacks remained, contents undisturbed, food supplies, water bottles, and Alex's meticulously folded clothes still organized by day of use. Lisa Thompson joined the search on the second day, her face drawn with worry and unspoken guilt. "Alex and I had broken up 3 months before," she explained, pushing aside a low-hanging branch. "But I knew how he packed for trips like this. He triple-checked everything: maps, supplies, emergency contacts. He wouldn't just wander off unprepared." The young woman paused at the campsite, her eyes scanning the scene with growing confusion. "Ryan's GoPro is missing," she noted immediately. That camera was practically an extension of his arm. He documented everything, especially on adventures with Alex. Officer Dana Reese, assigned as lead investigator, stood silently observing the peculiar scene. The seasoned law enforcement officer had worked dozens of missing persons cases, but something about this one touched a personal nerve. Her own daughter had disappeared years earlier, and the echoes of that unresolved pain colored her determination. "We're looking at two possibilities," she told the search team that evening. Either they wandered off deliberately, perhaps following something that caught their interest, or someone else was involved. She gestured toward the undisturbed campsite. "But neither theory explains what we're seeing. No one leaves a perfectly good tent and all their supplies behind voluntarily, and there's no evidence of foul play." As darkness fell again, the forest seemed to close in around them. The search dogs whined uneasily, refusing to venture deeper into certain areas, despite their handlers' commands. Reese watched as Lisa huddled near the campfire, scrolling through old photos of Alex on her phone, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. "We'll find them," Reese promised, though her voice lacked conviction. She'd seen enough to know that sometimes the forest kept its secrets, and the absence of that ever-present GoPro troubled her more than she cared to admit. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. As the days stretched into weeks, the investigation began to lose momentum. News vans that had once crowded the forest access roads gradually disappeared, and the faces of Alex Foster and Ryan Bell faded from the evening broadcasts. The initial flurry of public interest waned, leaving the families to shoulder the burden of the search alone. Carol Foster, eyes hollow from sleepless nights, refused to surrender to despair. She organized weekend search parties, distributing flyers with her son's thoughtful smile alongside Ryan's infectious grin. Local volunteers showed up faithfully, combing through underbrush and scaling rocky outcroppings that official teams had already cleared. Members of nearby tribal communities joined these civilian efforts, their knowledge of the land proving invaluable. An elderly tribal woman pulled Carol aside during one search, her weathered hand gripping the mother's arm with surprising strength. "The forest has always kept its secrets," she whispered. "Those who whisper among the pines, they've taken others before." When Carol pressed for clarification, the woman simply shook her head and walked away. Such stories spread among the searchers, but were largely dismissed by law enforcement and outsiders and superstitious folklore, a distraction from the rational investigation. Officer Dana Reese watched this unfold with growing frustration. The lead investigator stood at the edge of the search area one evening, staring into the darkening woods as volunteers trudged back to their vehicles. Unlike her colleagues, she couldn't simply file the case away and move on. "We're missing something," she told her team during their morning briefing. "I want every ravine checked again, every cave system mapped. These boys didn't just vanish." Her superior officer suggested reassigning resources to more recent cases, but Dana refused to back down. The team exchanged knowing glances. Everyone understood her obsession stemmed from her own tragedy. 5 years earlier, her daughter had disappeared without a trace, leaving Dana with a wound that never healed. "The forest knows," a tribal elder had told her once, when she'd sought their help in her daughter's case. Now those words haunted her as she studied maps of the area where Alex and Ryan had vanished. What had once seemed an inviting wilderness now felt malevolent to the searchers. Dense foliage concealing potential evidence, twisted roots tripping tired feet, and shadows deepening too quickly at dusk. The forest had transformed from a playground into an adversary, alive with secrets it stubbornly refused to yield. Dana stood at the trailhead where Alex's car had been found, watching mist curl between ancient trees. "What happened to you boys?" she whispered, her voice lost among the rustling leaves. "And who or what took you from us?" Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. As the days stretched into weeks, the investigation into Alex and Ryan's disappearance began to stall. Media vans that had once crowded the forest entrance gradually disappeared, their spotlight shifting to newer tragedies. The families, however, couldn't move on. They organized their own searches, trudging through undergrowth with local volunteers and members of nearby tribes who knew the land intimately. During one such search, an elderly tribal member pulled Carol Foster aside. "The forest has always kept its secrets," he whispered. "There are those who whisper among the pines." The cryptic warning sent shivers down her spine, though most outsiders dismissed such stories as superstition. Officer Dana Reese couldn't let go of the case. The seasoned investigator saw her own missing daughter's face in every photo of Alex and Ryan. "We're going deeper tomorrow," she'd insist during briefings, her voice leaving no room for argument. Her team exchanged worried glances as Dana pushed them to explore every ravine and cave, her determination sharpening inversely to the dwindling hope of finding the young men alive. "She's obsessed," one deputy confided to another. "But maybe that's exactly what this case needs." The forest that had once welcomed hikers and campers now felt different to search teams. Dense fog clung to the trees most mornings, muffling calls and disorienting even experienced trackers. Paths that appeared clear on maps would suddenly vanish, leading teams in circles. The wilderness seemed to be actively resisting their efforts, as if protecting something or someone. "It's like the damn place is alive," muttered one volunteer after his third day searching. He didn't return for a fourth. Dana spent nights reviewing maps and witness statements, the circles under her eyes darkening. During a particularly frustrating moment, she slammed her fist on her desk. "What are we missing?" she demanded of the empty room. "What aren't we seeing?" Meanwhile, the families found themselves suspended in grief's limbo, unable to mourn properly without bodies, yet struggling to maintain hope as weeks turned to months. Carol kept Alex's room untouched, his college acceptance letter still pinned to the bulletin board. Ethan Bell wore his brother's favorite jacket everywhere, the scent of Ryan gradually fading from the fabric. The forest, once a place of adventure and escape, had transformed in the community's eyes. Parents warned children to stay away. Hikers traveled in larger groups. The land that had swallowed two young men whole now seemed impenetrable. A vast green ocean of secrets it refused to yield, no matter how desperately they searched its depths. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. 10 months crawled by with no answers, each day stretching the family's hope thinner. Carol Foster had taken to lighting candles in her window every night, a beacon for her son that remained unacknowledged by the darkness. The investigation had gone cold, relegated to occasional mentions at the police station and sporadic updates from Dana Reese, whose determination remained unwavering despite her superiors' growing disinterest. Then, on a humid July morning in 2023, everything changed. Thomas Wilkins, a local fisherman casting lines in the early dawn, spotted something unusual caught in debris along the riverbank, nearly 3 miles downstream from where Alex and Ryan had set up camp. The object, partially buried in mud and covered in moss, revealed itself to be a GoPro camera. Its casing was battered from its journey through the currents, but remarkably intact. The first tangible clue since the young men had vanished into the mist-laden forest. "I almost walked right past it," Thomas later told reporters. "Something just made me look twice." The device was immediately surrendered to authorities. Word spread quickly through the small community, igniting a spark of hope that had nearly extinguished. Dana Reese personally collected the camera, her hands trembling slightly as she sealed it in an evidence bag. This could be nothing, she cautioned the families by phone, but it could be everything. Carol Foster and Ethan Bell arrived at the station within hours of each other, their faces bearing the weathered look of those who had been holding their breath for too long. Lisa Thompson joined them shortly after, her relationship with Ethan having evolved into an uneasy alliance forged in shared grief. Inside the digital forensics lab, technicians worked meticulously to extract data from the water-damaged device. The families waited in a conference room. the silence between them heavy with unspoken fears and desperate hopes. Online, speculation exploded. Ethan's YouTube channel, which had documented his amateur investigation for months, suddenly gained thousands of new subscribers. Amateur sleuths debated what the footage might reveal, while skeptics questioned whether the camera had actually belonged to the missing friends. "We need to prepare ourselves," Carol whispered to Ethan as they sat side by side, the hours of waiting stretching their nerves taut. "Whatever we see might not give us the answers we want." Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on the door. "But it's something," he replied. "After all this time, it's finally something." As night fell, Dana Reese entered the room, her expression unreadable. "We've recovered the footage," she announced quietly. "Are you ready to see it?" The three nodded, bracing themselves for whatever truths the GoPro had preserved in its digital memory, unaware that what they were about to witness would transform their private tragedy into a national obsession. The recovered footage begins with Ryan Bell's familiar laughter, his face filling the frame as he adjusts the GoPro. "Day one of the greatest adventure ever," he announces with his infectious grin. The camera pans to Alex Foster, methodically unpacking their gear and arranging it with his characteristic precision. "Dude, stop filming and help me set up the tent," Alex says, though his smile betrays his feigned annoyance. Ryan's commentary continues as he documents their campsite, a small clearing surrounded by towering pines, the gentle rush of the nearby river providing a soothing soundtrack to their preparations. The footage captures the easy rhythm of their friendship, Alex's careful organization contrasted with Ryan's spontaneity. They joke about past trips, reminisce about childhood adventures, and plan the hiking routes for the following day. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows through the trees, they build a fire and cook dinner. "This is the life," Ryan says, his face illuminated by the dancing flames. The camera, now mounted on its tripod, records their conversation as night falls completely around them. The forest grows darker, the fire smaller, and something in the atmosphere shifts almost imperceptibly. At first, it's barely noticeable, a faint, rhythmic sound beneath the crackling fire and rushing water. Ryan is the first to acknowledge it, tilting his head slightly. "Do you hear that?" he asks, his voice losing some of its earlier enthusiasm. "It's just the river," Alex responds, poking at the embers with a stick. But as minutes pass, the sound grows more distinct, a pattern too regular to be natural, too deliberate to ignore. The camera's microphone, designed to capture even subtle audio, picks up what human ears might miss. A low, pulsing chant, the words indistinguishable but the cadence unmistakable. Later footage, time-stamped at 2:17 in the morning, shows both young men inside their tent. The GoPro's night vision gives their faces an eerie greenish glow. Ryan leans close to the device, whispering, "I swear I keep hearing voices outside." Alex, always the rational one, tries to dismiss his friend's concerns. "It's probably hikers camping nearby," he suggests with a nervous laugh that betrays his own unease. But the camera doesn't lie. In the background, beneath their whispered conversation, the audio captures something chilling. Faint, unintelligible whispers that seem to emanate from the darkness beyond their campfire. The sounds aren't random. They have a pattern, a purpose, as if someone or something is trying to communicate. The footage ends with both friends falling into an uneasy silence, listening intently to what should be an empty forest, but clearly isn't. Whatever presence lurks in the darkness, the GoPro has preserved it, waiting for someone to find it 10 months later. As the forensic technicians continued to analyze the recovered GoPro footage, the families gathered in tense silence. The video progressed into the early morning hours of that fateful night, documenting a gradual but unmistakable shift in mood. "Hey, check this out," Ryan Bell whispered, his usually infectious grin now strained as he pointed the camera toward the tent's entrance. "You hear that?" The microphone captured a distant, rhythmic sound that seemed to pulse through the forest. Alex Foster, ever the practical one, dismissed it as probably just the river, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. The footage showed him checking the tent's zipper for the third time in an hour. As 3 o'clock approached, Ryan's facade began to crumble. He tried maintaining his characteristic humor, making jokes about bears and ghost stories, but the camera caught him in a vulnerable moment when he thought Alex was asleep. Huddled in his sleeping bag, the young man quietly wept, his shoulders shaking as he whispered, "Something's out there, I know it." Later, Alex took the device from his friend, filming in the dim light of their lantern. "Hey, Mom, Ethan, everyone," he began, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "We're fine, just having some weird vibes tonight. Probably nothing, but if you're watching this..." He paused, swallowing hard. "We love you guys. We'll be home soon." His voice cracked on the final words, betraying the confidence he struggled to project. The timestamp showed 4:17 in the morning, when both boys jolted upright at a sound outside. The camera, propped on Alex's backpack, captured their wide-eyed expressions as a shadow passed across the tent wall. "Did you see that?" Ryan hissed, clutching his sleeping bag. Then it happened. A hand, unmistakably human, yet somehow wrong, pressed firmly against the thin fabric of the tent. The fingers splayed wide, lingering there as if feeling for movement inside. "Oh my God," Alex whispered, his earlier skepticism evaporating instantly. The camera captured their panic in real time, Ryan scrambling backward while Alex lunged for the lantern. The hand remained pressed against the nylon for several excruciating seconds before slowly dragging downward and away. In the darkness that followed, only their ragged breathing could be heard as they huddled together in the corner of the tent. The GoPro, still recording, captured Ryan's trembling voice. "Don't make a sound. Please, Alex, don't make a sound." The families watching the footage sat in stunned silence, the reality of what their sons had experienced that night finally beginning to take horrifying shape. The footage continues with a timestamp showing 3:17 a.m. Ryan Bell's hands are visibly trembling as he holds the GoPro, the camera's night vision casting everything in an eerie green glow. The tent walls seem to breathe with the wind outside, creating shifting shadows that make both young men increasingly anxious. "I'm telling you, Alex, there's something out there," Ryan whispers, his normally cheerful demeanor replaced by wide-eyed fear. "I've been camping since I was 8, and I've never heard anything like this." Alex Foster, previously the voice of reason throughout their friendship, sits cross-legged in his sleeping bag. The camera catches him chewing his lower lip, a nervous habit his mother Carol had often mentioned in her interviews. "It's probably just the wind or some animals," he offers, though his voice lacks conviction. The audio suddenly picks up that rhythmic sound again, no longer ambiguous, but clearly a chanting pattern. 3 beats, then silence. 3 beats again. The microphone captures it perfectly, despite the rustling of sleeping bags and the boys' increasingly panicked breathing. Ryan turns the camera toward himself, his face a mask of terror. "If anyone finds this," he begins, but can't finish the thought. He swallows hard, then whispers, "I love you, Ethan. Tell Mom I'm sorry about her garden." The reference to his younger brother seems to break something in him. For several agonizing seconds, the footage shows Ryan quietly sobbing, shoulders shaking as he tries to muffle the sound with his sleeve. Alex moves closer, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder in silent support. "For the families, just in case," Alex says suddenly, taking the device from Ryan's trembling hands. He looks directly into the lens, his voice cracking slightly. "Mom, I love you. Everything's fine. We're just being paranoid. We'll laugh about this tomorrow." The lie hangs in the air, transparent and fragile. Without warning, a distinct handprint appears on the tent wall, 5 fingers pressing firmly against the fabric from outside. The camera focuses on it, lingering just long enough to confirm it's not a branch or animal. The hand is large, human-sized, and it stays there, unmoving, for several seconds. "Oh God," Alex whispers, his previous skepticism evaporating instantly. Ryan lunges for the flashlight, but Alex grabs his wrist. "No, they'll see us better," he hisses. They huddle together in the darkness, the GoPro between them still recording. The chanting grows louder, more voices joining in from different directions around the tent. In the final moments of footage, the camera catches a pair of mud-caked boots stopping directly outside the entrance. The zipper of the tent begins to move slowly upward. The lens shakes violently as one of the boys, impossible to tell which, grabs the camera. The screen goes black. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The final minutes of the GoPro footage haunted viewers with their fragmented chaos. Alex and Ryan's voices, once filled with excitement about their adventure, had transformed into desperate whispers. The rhythmic sound that had begun as a distant curiosity was now unmistakably a chant, methodical and deliberate, growing louder with each passing second. "Please, just leave us alone," Alex Foster could be heard pleading, his voice barely audible over the sound of his own ragged breathing. The camera shook violently as the young men huddled together in the darkness of their tent. Gone was the thoughtful, organized Alex who triple-checked maps and supplies. In his place was a young man consumed by raw terror. Ryan's normally cheerful demeanor had completely vanished. "They know our names, Alex," he whispered, his voice breaking. "How do they know our names?" The audio captured him reciting prayers he hadn't uttered since childhood, his words tumbling over each other in panicked succession. The chanting outside grew more insistent, though muffled by the tent fabric. The microphone picked up the cadence clearly, a series of repeated phrases that seemed to circle the campsite. Most disturbing was how the unknown voices would occasionally speak in unison, then split apart, as if multiple people were coordinating their movements around the tent. In one of the most analyzed segments, Alex could be heard whispering, "I should have listened to that old man at the trailhead. I should have listened." This cryptic statement would later become a focal point for investigators trying to piece together what happened before the recording. The final 60 seconds of footage contained the most chilling moment of all. The camera, apparently dropped in panic, captured the tent wall illuminated by the flashlight inside. A distinct shadow approached, human in shape, but somehow wrong in its proportions. The lens caught a pair of muddy boots stopping directly outside the entrance. The fabric of the tent bulged inward as something pressed against it. "They're here," Ryan whispered, his final words on the recording. The camera tumbled, capturing disorienting glimpses of the tent ceiling, the boys' terrified faces, and finally, as the tent flap was violently pulled open, a rush of darkness and indistinct figures. The last frame, analyzed endlessly by experts and amateur detectives alike, showed what appeared to be a hand reaching toward the lens before the recording abruptly ended. Whatever happened next remained unrecorded, leaving families, investigators, and eventually the entire nation to wonder what horror had befallen the two friends in those mist-shrouded woods. The footage ended, but the nightmare for those who loved Alex and Ryan was only beginning. The GoPro footage became a national obsession almost overnight. News channels played sanitized versions of the clips, while online forums dissected every frame, shadow, and sound with forensic intensity. The eerie chanting that had terrified Alex Foster and Ryan Bell in their final recorded moments sparked particular interest. Dr. Marissa Wilkins, a linguistics professor from the University of Washington, was brought in to analyze the audio. After weeks of careful study, she identified elements of a nearly extinct indigenous language native to the Pacific Northwest region. Her findings ignited controversy across academic circles and reignited heated debates about the land's complex history. These vocal patterns contain rhythmic structures consistent with ceremonial chants documented in the 1800s, Dr. Wilkins explained during a press conference. But the specific dialect has been considered extinct for generations. Officer Dana Reese found herself increasingly drawn to this cultural angle despite her superior's skepticism. The haunted look in her eyes betrayed her personal connection to the case. Her own daughter had vanished 3 years earlier. She arranged meetings with tribal elders from the area, seeking insights beyond what conventional investigation could provide. "The ones who call by name have always been there," an elder told her during one such meeting, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "The forest remembers what we try to forget." The investigator took copious notes, pushing past her initial doubts. These weren't just stories to her anymore, not when the evidence kept pointing towards something older and stranger than modern crime could explain. Meanwhile, Ethan Bell converted his bedroom into an investigation headquarters, walls covered with maps, timelines, and printouts of online theories. His YouTube channel had grown to over 50,000 subscribers, many offering their own analyses and support. "My brother and Alex are out there somewhere," he insisted in one late-night video, dark circles under his eyes. "And I won't stop until I find them." Lisa Thompson, still carrying the weight of her unresolved argument with Alex, reached out to Ethan after watching his videos. Their first meeting was tense. She, the ex-girlfriend with unresolved guilt. He, the brother desperate for answers. But their shared determination forged an unexpected alliance. "I know these woods better than most," Lisa said, spreading a detailed topographical map across Ethan's desk. "If they tried to escape along the river, there are only 3 viable routes." As they planned their next search, public interest in the case continued to grow. Some online communities embraced rational explanations, a criminal encounter, a tragic accident, while others delved into the supernatural, connecting the chance to decades of strange occurrences in the region. Dana Reese watched this unfold with growing unease. The truth, she suspected, lay somewhere in the shadows between what could be proven and what could only be felt. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. As the investigation broadened, a critical breakthrough emerged when a volunteer search team member stumbled upon one of Ryan Bell's wireless earbuds. The small device lay half-buried in dense undergrowth, nearly 3 miles from the original campsite. Despite being waterlogged and caked with mud, forensic analysis confirmed it belonged to Ryan, matching the serial number registered to his account. Dana Reese stood silently as the technician delivered the confirmation, her weathered face betraying a mix of hope and dread. This was the first physical evidence discovered since the GoPro's recovery months earlier, and its location made little sense within the established timeline. "This changes everything," the officer told Carol Foster over the phone, her voice steady despite her racing thoughts. "The earbud was found in the opposite direction of the river where we recovered the camera." Theories proliferated among both investigators and the public. Some believed the boys had survived their initial encounter and fled deeper into the forest, perhaps disoriented or pursued. Others suspected someone had deliberately scattered their belongings to confuse searchers. The most disturbing possibility, that someone continued moving their personal effects long after their disappearance, remained unspoken in official briefings, but dominated online forums. Ethan Bell, emboldened by the new evidence, expanded his amateur investigation. His YouTube channel subscribers doubled overnight as he documented each new development with meticulous detail. "My brother wouldn't have dropped this by accident," he insisted in one emotional video. Ryan treated these earbuds like they were precious gems. Lisa Thompson joined Ethan's renewed search efforts despite their complicated history. The guilt she carried over her final argument with Alex Foster had transformed into a desperate need for answers. Together, they retraced possible escape routes from the campsite, their shared grief forging an uneasy alliance. "I keep thinking about that hand on the tent," Lisa confided to Ethan during one long hike. "What if they ran in different directions? What if one of them made it further than we thought?" The tribal elders, previously reluctant to engage with outsiders, now offered limited assistance. One respected elder agreed to walk the forest with Dana, pointing out areas where the land felt disturbed. When they reached the spot where the earbud was discovered, the elder stopped abruptly, refusing to continue. "The forest remembers footsteps," was all he would say before turning back. As winter gave way to early spring, the search intensified. Volunteers combed every ravine and thicket, hoping for another clue that might connect the scattered evidence. The earbud had reignited both hope and fear. Hope that the boys might have survived longer than anyone thought possible, and fear of what that survival might have entailed in the silent, watching woods. In February 24, a breakthrough shattered the eerie silence that had descended on the case. A volunteer searcher, trudging through dense undergrowth miles from the original campsite, spotted something glinting against the dark forest floor. It was one of Ryan Bell's wireless earbuds, instantly recognizable by the distinctive scratch mark on its side, a memento from when Ethan had accidentally dropped it months before his brother's disappearance. Carol Foster collapsed into tears when Dana Reese called with the news. "It's the first real sign in months," she whispered, her voice wavering between hope and dread. The device, though waterlogged and damaged, was conclusively identified as belonging to Ryan. Forensic technicians carefully examined the earbud, noting that its position suggested it hadn't simply fallen. It appeared deliberately placed. "The location makes no sense," Dana explained during the family briefing, spreading a map across the station's conference table. The earbud had been discovered nearly 4 miles from where the GoPro was recovered, in the opposite direction from the campsite. This discovery reignited both hope and suspicion among investigators. Lisa Thompson, who had been volunteering with search teams every weekend, studied the map intently. "Ryan never went anywhere without those earbuds," she said quietly. "He wouldn't have dropped one accidentally." The implication hung heavy in the room. Either Ryan had traveled far from the campsite after the recording ended, or someone had moved his belongings to mislead searchers. Ethan immediately incorporated the new evidence into his amateur investigation, filming himself at the discovery site. "This proves they didn't just vanish at the camp," he told his growing online audience, his eyes reflecting determination that barely masked his pain. "My brother was here, or at least his things were." The discovery prompted investigators to question their initial assumptions. Had one or both young men survived longer than they'd thought? The pristine condition of the earbud, protected from the elements in a small hollow beneath a fallen log, suggested it hadn't been exposed to the weather for 18 months. "We're considering all possibilities," Dana told reporters, her professional demeanor barely concealing her own renewed obsession with the case. This could indicate movement after the initial incident, either voluntary or forced. For the families, the earbud represented both torment and possibility. It proved the investigation wasn't cold, that pieces of the puzzle remained to be found. Yet it also deepened the mystery, creating more questions than answers. "Did they run? Were they taken?" Carol asked during a private moment with Dana. "Or is someone playing a cruel game with us?" The officer had no answers, only a promise to keep searching. As teams expanded their efforts to the new area, the forest seemed to watch in silence, guarding whatever secrets it still held about the fate of Alex Foster and Ryan Bell. As investigators pieced together the mystery, they returned to the night when Alex Foster and Ryan Bell vanished. The GoPro footage had become central to understanding what truly happened at that remote campsite in the Pacific Northwest forests. Dana Reese spread the evidence photos across her desk, chronologically arranging the events. The footage showed a typical camping trip transforming into something sinister. The rhythmic chanting, now identified as containing elements of an indigenous language, grew progressively louder throughout the recording, suggesting whoever made those sounds was deliberately approaching the tent. "This wasn't random," Dana told her team, pointing to the timestamp when the hand pressed against the tent fabric. "The precision, the timing, Someone knew exactly what they were doing. The officer's eyes reflected her determination, the case resonating with her own unresolved trauma of a missing daughter. Meanwhile, Lisa Thompson had taken to reviewing the footage frame by frame in her apartment. Night after night, she stared at the digital images, searching for anything the authorities might have missed. Her relationship with Alex had ended months before his disappearance, but guilt drove her obsession. Their argument, their final conversation, haunted her every waking moment. On the 47th viewing, Lisa noticed something. At exactly 2 hours, 17 minutes into the recording, a shadow moved behind the tent. She paused, rewound, played it again at half speed. There it was, a silhouette passing between the tent and the trees, barely visible in the darkness, but unmistakably human in shape. "I found something." Lisa's voice trembled as she called Dana the next morning. The investigator arrived within the hour, her skepticism fading as she watched the enhanced section of footage. "This changes everything," Dana whispered, already reaching for her phone. This wasn't just some forest legend or accident. Someone was stalking them. The shadow's deliberate movement, combined with the arranged evidence found months later, the strategically placed earbuds, the torn shirt in the cave, painted a disturbing picture. What had initially seemed like a tragic wilderness disappearance now appeared orchestrated, perhaps even ritualistic. Dana reopened the investigation officially that afternoon, calling in additional resources. The tribal elders she'd previously consulted watched the enhanced footage with grave expressions, their warnings about those who whisper among the pines suddenly carrying new weight. As Carol Foster lit another candle in her window and Ethan Bell updated his search website with the new findings, the mystery deepened. The forest had claimed 2 young men, but the evidence now suggested it wasn't the forest alone that was responsible. The narrative flashes back to the night Alex Foster and Ryan Bell vanished. Forensic analysts had meticulously reconstructed the timeline, using the recovered GoPro footage, cell tower data, and witness statements from nearby campers. What emerged wasn't a story of misadventure, but something far more deliberate. The rhythmic chanting captured on the audio, initially dismissed as wind or water, had been isolated and enhanced. It maintained a consistent pattern, rising and falling with unnatural precision. Sound experts confirmed it couldn't be attributed to natural phenomena. The hand pressing against the tent fabric showed clear intentional movement, fingers splaying and contracting, as if testing the material's resistance. Someone knew exactly what they were doing, Dana Reese explained to the families during a private briefing. The officer's eyes betrayed her exhaustion, but her determination remained unbroken. The camera didn't just disappear, it was taken, and whoever took it knew how to avoid being seen. Lisa Thompson had become obsessed with the footage, watching it frame by frame in her apartment night after night. The ex-girlfriend's guilt had transformed into relentless focus. During one sleepless session, she noticed something the professionals had missed, a shadow passing behind the tent approximately 16 minutes before the hand appeared. "It's barely there," she told Ethan Bell over coffee the next morning. "But it's definitely human-shaped. Someone was circling them, watching, waiting for the right moment." Her hands trembled slightly as she showed him the enhanced still image on her laptop. The young man stared at the screen, his expression hardening. "They were being hunted," he whispered. Lisa brought her discovery to Dana, who immediately reassembled the investigation team. The shadow confirmed what the officer had suspected. This wasn't random. The boys had been targeted, stalked, and potentially taken by someone who knew the forest well enough to move without leaving obvious tracks. "Look at the positioning," Dana pointed out during the briefing. Whoever this was approached from downwind, stayed in the darkest areas between trees, and timed their movements with natural sounds. She paused, looking around the room. "That's not opportunistic behavior. That's calculated." The revelation shifted the entire framework of the investigation. What had seemed like a mysterious disappearance now bore the hallmarks of a carefully orchestrated event. The scattered evidence, the GoPro by the river, the tripod half buried, the earbuds miles apart, suggested movement across the landscape after the initial encounter. The question remained, had Alex and Ryan been forced to move through the forest under duress, or had someone else transported their belongings to confuse investigators? Either way, the shadow behind the tent had finally confirmed what the families had feared from the beginning. The boys were not alone that night. Another twist arose when a second earbud, this time the left one, was discovered by hikers nearly 3 miles from the first. The scattered evidence formed a jagged trail across the landscape, suggesting someone moved between multiple locations after the initial incident. The hikers, a couple celebrating their anniversary, had veered off the main trail to photograph wildflowers when they spotted the small black device partially buried beneath fallen leaves. At first, they thought nothing of it, just another piece of discarded technology. But something made them take a photo and report it to the ranger station. When Dana Reese received the call, she felt that familiar tightness in her chest. The officer had seen too many false leads over the months, but something about this discovery felt different. Laboratory analysis confirmed what she suspected. The earbud belonged to Ryan Bell, matching the right one found weeks earlier. "It's like breadcrumbs," Ethan whispered, his voice cracking as he examined the map where Dana had marked both locations with red pins. The younger Bell brother had lost weight since his YouTube investigation began, dark circles permanently etched beneath his eyes. "He wanted us to find him." Carol Foster stood silently by the window, her gaze fixed on the forest visible beyond the police station parking lot. "Or someone wanted us to keep looking," she said finally, the weight of 18 months of uncertainty evident in every word. Lisa Thompson, who had been analyzing the geographical pattern of discoveries, pointed to the map. "The distance between finds is increasing," she noted. "First the GoPro near the river, then the right earbud in the undergrowth, now the left one 3 miles away." The authorities began to suspect that, whether by their own will or under duress, Alex and Ryan had traversed the forest after leaving their camp. The scattered personal items created a disturbing timeline, suggesting movement over several days rather than a single night. "People don't just vanish," Dana said during the team briefing, her voice steady despite her growing unease. "And they certainly don't leave their belongings in a neat trail unless they're trying to tell us something." Forensic analysis of the second earbud revealed traces of the same soil found at the cave where Ryan's torn shirt had been discovered. This connection strengthened the theory of deliberate movement between locations, though the question of who or what drove them on remained unanswered. As the evidence mounted, the investigation shifted from a simple missing persons case to something far more complex. The forest, once merely the backdrop to a tragedy, now seemed an active participant in the mystery, a vast, silent witness holding secrets just beyond reach. The question that haunted everyone involved was no longer just where Alex and Ryan had gone, but what force had scattered their possessions across miles of wilderness like macabre souvenirs. Adding to the unease, a group of campers reports a disturbing encounter on the same trail in the dead of night. Unseen hands press against their tent, and distant chanting echoes through the trees. Their testimony, eerily similar to Alex Foster and Ryan Bell's experience, lends credence to the theory that the phenomenon is ongoing. The campers, 3 college students from Portland, had no prior knowledge of the missing hiker's case details. Their account included the same rhythmic sounds captured on the recovered footage, a detail that had been deliberately withheld from public reports. Officer Dana Reese interviewed them personally, her professional skepticism visibly eroding as they described the pressure against their tent fabric, the whispers that seemed to call their names. "I kept thinking someone was playing a prank," one camper told her, voice trembling. "But when we unzipped the tent at dawn, we found handprints in the mud, dozens of them, surrounding us in a perfect circle." Dana's own trauma resurfaced as she documented their statements. The parallels to her missing daughter's case were impossible to ignore. Though she struggled to maintain objectivity, she drove 3 hours to meet with a respected tribal elder, Jacob Nighthawk, who had previously declined official involvement. "The forest remembers. It chooses who returns," the elder warned, refusing to elaborate further. When pressed about the chanting, his weathered face darkened. "Some songs aren't meant for recording. Some names shouldn't be spoken where the trees can hear." The campers' encounter sparked renewed interest in the case. Local news outlets that had long abandoned the story now returned, their headlines growing increasingly sensational. "Haunted Trail claims new victims," blared one, while another questioned, "Are Alex and Ryan still out there?" Carol Foster received these reports with quiet resignation. "I don't care if people think it's ghosts or kidnappers or whatever else," she told reporters gathered outside her home. "I just want to know what happened to my son." Ethan Bell took a different approach, incorporating the new testimony into his online investigation. His YouTube subscriber count doubled overnight as viewers debated the implications. Lisa Thompson, watching from the periphery, recognized the pattern forming, how grief transforms into myth, how loss becomes legend. Dana Reese requested additional resources to patrol the area, but her superiors remained reluctant to allocate manpower based on what they termed campfire stories. She found herself caught between institutional skepticism and mounting evidence that something truly inexplicable had occurred in those woods, something that might still be happening. As summer approached again, hiking permits for the area plummeted. The forest grew quieter, save for the occasional thrill-seeker drawn by the mystery. The trees stood sentinel, harboring their secrets, while beneath them, the search for Alex and Ryan continued, now shadowed by the possibility that they were never alone in those woods to begin with. A breakthrough came when an amateur analyst applied infrared filters to the GoPro's final frames. The haunting results sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Faint outlines of human faces peered from behind the trees, faces completely invisible to the naked eye. These ghostly observers had been there all along, watching Alex Foster and Ryan Bell, yet hidden from conventional viewing. Dana Reese stared at the enhanced images in disbelief. After 18 months of searching, the evidence suggested the boys had never been alone that night. The officer, whose own missing daughter case remained unsolved, felt her hands trembling as she studied each shadowy figure. There were at least 4 distinct silhouettes, positioned strategically around the campsite. "These aren't digital artifacts," confirmed the technician who'd processed the footage. Something national news outlets descended on the quiet Pacific Northwest community, with headlines dubbing the forest haunted and fueling a frenzy of speculation. Social media exploded with theories ranging from cult activity to paranormal phenomena. The hashtag Whispers in the Pines began trending as armchair detectives dissected every frame. Carol Foster avoided the media circus, finding the sensationalism disrespectful to her son's memory. Meanwhile, Ethan Bell embraced the attention, hoping it might generate new leads. His YouTube channel subscribers doubled overnight as viewers flocked to his amateur investigation. Lisa Thompson approached the new evidence with analytical caution. "These could be other hikers," she suggested during a tense meeting with Dana. "Or they could be doctored images." Yet her voice betrayed the fear that had haunted her since their breakup, that she might have saved Alex had she joined them on the trip. Forensic experts cautioned against jumping to conclusions, but acknowledged the evidence was compelling. The notion that Alex and Ryan were being watched, possibly pursued, reshapes our entire understanding of what happened that night, explained the lead analyst in a press conference. Tribal elders who had warned about those who whisper among the pines from the beginning remained respectfully silent in public. However, in private conversations with Dana, They shared ancient stories of forest guardians who protected sacred grounds from trespassers. As theories multiplied, one undeniable fact remained. The boys had not been alone in those woods. Whether stalked by human predators or something older and less understood, their final moments had been witnessed. The GoPro, that faithful electronic companion, had captured what human eyes could not perceive. A circle of watchers, patient and silent, closing in on the unsuspecting friends. The investigation entered a new phase, with Dana requesting specialized equipment and additional personnel. "We're no longer looking for lost hikers," she told her superiors. "We're looking for whoever or whatever was in those woods with them." With pressure mounting from the public and media, Officer Dana Reese knew this might be their last chance. She organized a final, comprehensive search operation. Bringing together experienced law enforcement personnel and tribal trackers whose ancestors had navigated these forests for generations. Before entering the dense woodland, the tribal elders performed a solemn ritual. They burned sacred herbs, their chants rising with the smoke as they acknowledged the land's ancient history and asked for safe passage. Dana watched with newfound respect, her skepticism eroded by months of unexplainable evidence. Some of her colleagues exchanged uncomfortable glances, but no one interrupted. "The forest has its own memory," one elder told her, his weathered hand resting on her shoulder. "We do not enter as conquerors, but as guests." The tension between conventional law enforcement methods and indigenous knowledge had been building throughout the investigation. Yet in this moment, as the morning mist clung to the trees, those differences seemed less important than their shared purpose: finding Alex Foster and Ryan Bell. Teams spread out in a carefully coordinated pattern, equipped with advanced technology and guided by trackers who read the landscape like a familiar text. They moved through ravines and across streams, calling the missing young men's names into the silence. On the third day, in a perfectly circular clearing none of the previous searches had documented, they found them. Not the boys themselves, but their possessions. Alex's wristwatch lay beside Ryan's battered phone, arranged with such deliberate care that it couldn't have been accidental. Other personal items formed a strange pattern: a wallet, a compass, a pocket knife. "It's like someone wanted us to find these," whispered a tracker, refusing to touch anything until photographs were taken. Dana crouched beside the items, her trained eye noting the absence of weathering despite months of exposure. The phone's screen was cracked but clean of dirt. The watch hands had stopped at 3:17, the exact time the GoPro footage had ended. "This isn't random," she said, her voice steady despite the chill running down her spine. "This is a message." The tribal elder who had spoken to her earlier nodded gravely. "The forest gives back what it chooses to return." As forensic technicians carefully collected each item, Dana stood at the edge of the clearing, watching shadows move between trees. For a moment, brief enough to dismiss as imagination, she thought she heard the same rhythmic chanting from the recovered footage. The search continued for 2 more days, but yielded nothing further. No bodies, no blood, no definitive answers. Just carefully arranged personal effects in a perfect circle. Like pieces on a game board, whose rules remained unknown. In the aftermath of the final search, a somber quiet settled over the community. The families gathered at the river's edge, where the GoPro had been found, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of paper lanterns. Carol Foster stood with her shoulders squared, refusing to bow under the weight of uncertainty. She had transformed her home into a shrine of sorts. Maps covering walls, timelines stretching across tables, and that ever-present lantern burning on the porch each night. "I'll keep it lit until he comes home," Carol whispered to Dana Reese, who had become more than just an investigator to the families. "Even if it's just to guide his spirit back to me." Ethan Bell continued his digital crusade, his YouTube channel evolving from amateur investigation to a platform for families of the missing. His room remained exactly as it had been. My brother is out there, and I won't stop until I find him. Lisa Thompson found purpose in her pain. The guilt she carried over her last argument with Alex transformed into fierce advocacy. She organized support groups for those left behind, creating spaces where grief could exist without judgment. Her apartment walls were adorned with photos of Alex, not as the missing person on posters, but as the boy she had loved, laughing and alive. But not knowing is the hardest part, she confided to Carol during one of their now regular coffee meetings. But somehow, we keep going. Dana Reese finally submitted her report, hundreds of pages documenting every lead, interview, and theory. The official conclusion remained frustratingly open-ended. 2 young men vanished under suspicious circumstances, with evidence suggesting both human intervention and environmental factors. Her superiors wanted closure, but Dana refused to fabricate certainty where none existed. "The forest keeps its secrets," one tribal elder told her as they stood at the trailhead where it all began. "But it also preserves them." The case file remained open, but active investigation dwindled. Media attention shifted to newer tragedies, though occasional anniversary specials would resurrect public interest. The disappearance of Alex Foster and Ryan Bell became something between history and legend. A story told around campfires, a warning whispered among hikers preparing to venture into those same woods. For those closest to the missing, life continued in a state of suspended animation, neither moving forward nor truly standing still. They existed in the space between acceptance and hope, carrying the weight of unanswered questions, while somehow finding the strength to rise each morning. The forest watched, silent and ancient, holding its secrets close.